Management of Greenpanel Industries with us. It was a weak set of numbers actually for them. The weakness continues in pricing and the export markets. In fact, the company witnessed a drop of more than 35% in plywood volumes. To discuss this and more, we're joined by V Venkatramani, the CFO at Greenpanel Industries. Mr. Venkatramani, thanks a lot for joining in. You know, I was noticing that the top line the miss begins from the top line itself. I mean, it's almost a 17% fall that you've seen year on year in your revenues. EBITDA is down about 50%. Can you tell us what is the kind of mix that you've seen in terms of domestic and exports? Where have you seen the pressure? And what is the expectation as we move along the year?
As far as the MDF segment is concerned, the mix is approximately 75% domestic and 25% exports. So even in the first quarter, we were around those levels. Actually, our volume suffered because the Uttarakhand plant was shut down for 19 days for some major repairs. And that impacted volumes and also the margins.
So hi, good afternoon. So that shutdown impacted your volumes. Could you tell us what, now that everything is back on track, what would volumes look like, for the rest of the year in comparison to the previous year, comparable period?
Okay. So we did about 5,05,000 cubic meters last year, domestic and exports put together, and we are targeting 12 to 15% volume growth. So I guess we should be ending somewhere around 5,75,000 cubic meters for the full year.
This is MDF.
That's right.
And what about plywood, sir? What will numbers look like? Because there also volumes were down sharply.
Yeah, that's right. Plywood, we are targeting 8 to 10% growth. So possibly we should be doing about 9 million square meters for the full year.
Okay, so 12 to 15% MDF volume growth and 8 to 10% plywood volume growth. That's something that you had mentioned earlier as well. Got that. Any outlook that you can give us on margins? Because this time we've seen an increase in the raw material costs, increase in the brand spends as well. And overall your margins, I mean, you used to enjoy 28, 29% margins. It's fallen all the way to 17%. What do you think the range could be in the quarters to come?
Yeah, business goes through cycles. It's never linear. So I think we'll always see margins varying significantly. So for the current year, we are targeting operating margins for MDF in the range of 23 to 25% and 8 to 10% operating margin for the plywood segment.
There's been a major fall in export realizations. Can you tell us what is happening there?
Yeah, we took price cuts last year, both in Q3 and Q4, aggregating to about 12%. Primarily, there was a significant increase of imports into the Middle East, which is our major exports market from Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia. So since those volumes were coming in at lower prices, we had to cut our own prices. So I think this was brought about because of a demand slowdown in US and Europe. So instead of exporting furniture, these countries were exporting MDF at dumping prices. Basically, they were doing it on a marginal cost model. So I think as soon as we start seeing a recovery in US and Europe, they will go back to furniture exports. And that should help to improve the pricing on the export front.
But that has not happened yet. I mean, things are still bad.
No, it's not happened yet, and I don't think it's likely to happen in a hurry. So for the current year, we'll be primarily depending upon the domestic markets to maintain the EBITDA guidance.
Okay. Can you tell us about the further plans in terms of, CAPEX as well as how you plan to fund it? I think earlier you had said in your conference call as well that you have a 600 crore outlay. And you've already spent about 10% in FY23. So how much do you plan to spend in FY24? And would this mean that you would have to take on more debt on your books?
Yeah, we will be taking some debt. So for that 600 crore capex, it will be a mix of about 60% coming from internal accruals and about 40% from debt. And almost 80% of the total capital expenditure will be incurred in the current year.
Okay.
So what will overall debt numbers look like then by the end of the year?
I think we will probably be about, current debts are around 130 crores. So we should possibly be looking at around 80 crores at the end of the year. And assuming that the entire debt for the new project comes on the books by the end of the current year, we'll possibly be close to about 320 crores of gross debt.
320 crores of gross debt. And what about the net debt?
Net debt will possibly be positive in the current year, but I think once the capital expenditure is completed next year, we should be back to net debt negative.
Okay. All right. So that's on the debt side. Just one more word on the export markets. Can you tell us, for exports particularly, I mean, when do you see, the realizations have fallen quite a bit in the export MDF business is what I'm talking about. When do you see a complete recovery play through? Do you think it could be a couple of quarters down the line? Because exports have been challenging for a while. In terms of a timeline, what are we looking at?
It's difficult to forecast because nobody knows when we'll see a recovery in US and Europe. So I'm assuming it could take anything between 12 to 18 months.
Okay. Just one last question from my side. What is the share of value-added products for you now? And how is that part doing? Is it doing better than the other portfolio?
Yeah, it's doing quite well. Even in the first quarter when operations were impacted, the mix of value-added products on the domestic side was about 54% in volume terms, which compared to Q1 last year was around 49%. So we have seen significant improvement in the mix of value-added products.
All right, we'll leave it there. Mr. Venkatramani, appreciate you joining in with all of those details. And it's good to speak with you on the back of the earnings. And so that's the stock 1.5% higher. So that shutdown in the quarter, really impacted things. But they are confident of 8 to 10% growth. Sorry, 12 to 15% growth, volume growth in the plywood segment, and 8 to 10% growth in the, MDF segment. MDF is the big part of the business. Almost, 85% is MDF for the company. We'll take a very quick break here.